Hello, welcome to a new week's reading vlog. I've started a book that I'm really liking. It's called Into the Planet. This is a nonfiction. It says My Life as a Cave Diver. So hey, here's a fun fact. Like 2 or 3 years ago, a subscriber knitted me or crocheted me. She crocheted me a bookmark. Oh, the cleverness of me. I don't use bookmarks very much because I like to annotate my books, so I just shove the pencil in there. But this one, I've not been annotating, I've just been reading. So I've used the bookmark. I don't know if you still follow me, but if you do, here it is. I use it. Anyway, Into the Planet is a nonfiction following a cave diver. It has pictures. I love it when nonfictions do that. So I've read the first half of the book, and in the first half, we're following her spark of interest in diving and then cave diving, as well as her kind of fight to be recognized in a field that's not just male dominated, but that's extremely male dominated. Being a cave diver is very, very physically demanding as well as mentally demanding, and it's extremely dangerous. You have to be able to conquer extreme amounts of fight or flight fear. And so, for many reasons, it is a field that is extremely male dominated. One of those reasons, among all the ones that I just listed, is that it's extremely male dominated, which makes it extremely difficult for women to get in the field. So we follow Jill, who has this passion, this desire. It's like it's a piece of who she is. She can't live without it. And her interest in it, that exploration of that passion, the dives that she gets to do in the beginning as she learns the craft, and she really has to face the reality of how dangerous this career path is, as well as her fight to be recognized in a field where she is making great progress, but she isn't getting that recognition. It's also her personal life as she falls in love and gets married, and you know, it's her story, so it shows all of those things as these things usually do. So far it's been really interesting. We've done a lot of the groundwork, a lot of the beginning stuff, but we've gotten into some of the big dives now. And now that we're into the big dives, I'm way more interested and having a really good time. I personally don't have any desire to become a scuba diver or to scuba dive at all, but I love the water. I love the ocean so deeply, so I don't have words for how much I love the ocean. So seeing somebody who loves my ocean as much as I do, but in a different way, is really cool, and I'm really enjoying her story so far. And I feel like now I'm in the meat of the book, so I'm really excited to read more. Welcome to the vlog. So I finished Into the Planet, and I really enjoyed this, especially the last third of it. She goes off on a different kind of expedition, one that I won't explain to you because I want you to be able to experience it, and she goes on several different diving expeditions throughout this book, so, you know, you can experience it if you feel like it. But that final one was so interesting, partially because, so she is well read on explorers. She's an adventurer, she's an explorer, she's gone places that very few people have gone. She's discovered new cave systems, and she's done a lot in her career, and because of that she is in tune with other great names in adventure and exploration as well. So anyway, it was really fun because the final expedition that she went on, there were certain geographical similarities between her expedition and Ernest Shackleton. And so she made so many casual references to Shackleton and what he endured, as well as, you know, the experiences that he had, and paralleled them with her own. And obviously she had a very different expedition than he did, thankfully, but it was just fun because The Endurance was one of my favorite books of the year last year. So as she's just casually referencing Shackleton, I was like, we're speaking the same language. I can have this conversation with you, which is just fun for me. But anyway, the expedition that she went on as well itself was just fascinating. But in this book, she had to make decisions for herself. She had to choose to carve her own path and not kind of do things that fit the mold and that people expected of her. She had to choose to follow her own passions in life. She talked a lot about not a lot. She talked some about the mental makeup and genetic structure of people who are extreme adventurers that get into extreme careers like this, and how there's actually something different. There's like a different chemical that a lot of them have. She talked about relationships, she talked about career moves, she talked about personal moves that she was able to, or personal and career moves that she was able to make with her husband, as well as things that she set off and did on her own. She talked about the comfortability, or I guess just acceptance of death, and the fact that this is something that you just have to see and get used to when you have a career like this, because you could do everything right and still everything can go wrong. And she's had to recover bodies of multiple friends, and that's just not something that you stop mourning, but it's something that you have to just accept is now a part of your life when you choose this kind of a career, which is just wild to me. Anyway, it was really good. I really enjoyed it. Would you enjoy it? I don't have any idea, but this is the kind of nonfiction that I tend to gravitate towards. I like reading people's experiences. I like learning about facets of life that I myself will never experience, so I had a great time. I've started an audiobook, Stoner, and I don't know how to feel about this book. I mean, I'm loving it, but also, what even is this? So it follows a man named William Stoner, who grew up on a farm in Missouri, went off to college, challenged himself academically, and then became a professor at said college. And he feels very passionate about his work. And there are a few things that he cares about in life. It's his subject matter and passing on that information, as well as this ideal domestic life that he'd like to have, which is very simple. It's a very simple life. It's just a loving wife, a happy home, a good relationship with his beautiful daughter. And he has a very simple desires in life. And his life is very simple. His life is very mundane, but it's also very melancholy. And Stoner is quite possibly the most passive character I've ever read a book from. He will, not in all things. There is a scene that I just read or listened to that there was this oral examination that he fought for what he believed was right. He was like, his perspective was, I will not concede this point. I will not, I will give a student the grade they deserve. I don't care how you try to manipulate me. I don't care how you try to spin the situation. Facts are facts. This is what's right by me, by my standards. I won't budge, right? So there are certain things where he does stand his ground, but in so many things in his life, he just will let his life be ruined. He will let people walk into his life, or people who he's allowed in his life, actively intentionally destroy, dismantle what he's built. And he will passively sit by and watch it happen and just accept the fate of his life. It's wild to me. There are many active characters in this book, and they're usually people that are trying to harm him or trying to destroy his life, just insufferable humans in this book. It's very interesting because it's not really a book where you root for people necessarily. Even Stoner himself, it's not really a book where you root for people necessarily. This book is equally boring and gripping. And I don't mean boring in the sense that I'm just like, oh my gosh, move on, do something interesting, I don't care. I don't have that sentiment. I'm actually on the edge of my seat reading this, and I'm excited to read the next chapter. I constantly want to be reading the next chapter. I'm so engrossed in this story. But when I say boring, I mean that it really just hones in on the boringness of humanity, the mundane everyday life of an average person, but in the most gripping way. I don't even know how to what is this book? I'm half done with the audiobook and I still don't know what the point is. Like, I still don't actually know what we're doing here or what I'm supposed to get from it. But I do know that I am fascinated by what's happening. I just couldn't tell you why. I don't know. I'm reading it though. Hey, sorry there wasn't a second interlude in this vlog like I usually like to do. We had a sudden death in the family. We've had kind of a rough week, so we haven't been out as much as normal, or at least not out in nature. So I finished Stoner. And do I still not know how to talk about this book? I think that's probably the case. This is a really tough one to discuss because it's just a guy's life. It's just a guy's uneventful life. Even at the very beginning of the book, it just kind of tells you this is a story about a guy who lives and then dies. I mean, at the very beginning, like the opening sentences of the book say, here's Stoner's life. He's going to live. He's going to die. No one's going to remember him. Like, he will leave a very small imprint on this earth. And even those that he did leave a mark on, it's a very light mark. Like, that's how the book opens. And you kind of leave the book feeling a little bit the same way. It's interesting because it shows an uneventful life that still at least had significance for him. Like, he at least had passions. He at least had things that he cared about. He at least had things that mattered to him. And I think that probably even he wishes that he had fought a bit more for some of those things that mattered, but he didn't, and that's the life that he lived. And it's just a life. It's not the life of a hero or of someone who did something great or made great discoveries or impacted the world. It's just a life. But it was still an important life. It was still one that mattered. It was still one that did something. He may not have done something that makes his name echo in the catalogs of history, but his life still mattered. It was still important, and it still held value. And I don't know, I guess there's something, part of it has to do with the writing, because the writing was very engrossing, but I think there's also just something very desirable about reading the life of someone that just feels so average and seeing their failings and their successes with no fanfare. It just is what it is. There's just something very human about the life of Stoner, and it's a really reflective book, and I think it's a book that kind of calls the reader to do some reflecting as well. I don't know. I'm not sure how to talk about this book. It's so strange because if you ask me what's the book about, I could tell you point by point. I could tell you all about Stoner's life. I could tell you about his beginnings, the beginning of his marriage, the unraveling of many, many things. I could tell you all about his relationship with his daughter, about his relationship with his students, about his relationship with certain members of faculty. I could tell you so many things about Stoner's life, but what's the book about? Just his life. I don't know. Have you read it? Do you know how to talk about this book? Because I don't think I do. I can say that I'm very glad I read it. It was a fascinating read, but I don't know why. I'm going to be discussing this with some friends. Jimmy, Joanna, and Alan all kind of just shoved this book in my face and said, read it now or die. Something like that. And I believe they've done the same to Philip because he's also just finished reading it. So all of us, or some number of that group, are going to get together and discuss it at some point. So it should be a really interesting book to discuss because I don't know how to discuss it, but I'd like to. And I know that they all enjoyed it. So look out for that, I guess. Look, if you look for my community tabs on my other channel at the beginning of every month, I'm sure it'll be on a schedule somewhere. If you've read the book and want to discuss it, or if you haven't read it and would like to hear some more thoughts, because I apparently don't have any. I don't know. It's a book I read. It's a book I'm glad I read. It's a book that I don't know how to talk about. I didn't read any manga this week. I had planned to, in between reading Dragon Ball and starting Dragon Ball Z, I had planned to read I Want to Eat Your Pancreas, but a couple of friends told me now's not the time because it's a bit of an emotional book, takes you through the ringer, and I am very fragile right now. I'm just going to put it off for a couple of weeks. So I might start Dragon Ball Z just go right into it instead. Oh, I'm also reading An Ascendance of a Bookworm. I'm reading the manga, not the light novel. I have since learned that that's devastating to many, so I might go back and read the light novel if I enjoy the manga. But I'm going to wait till I'm a little bit further on in that before I chat with you about it in a vlog. Anyway, I hope you all have had a good week. I hope you're reading some good stuff. Chat with me more in the comments about any of the books that you want to chat about. I will see you again soon. Bye.